Every time I start focusing on a topic, I start seeing the topic everywhere around me. And since I started writing about puppies a few weeks ago, and we have part 1 to 3 of puppy blogs, and basically this is a little bit of a rehash of part 2. I've been seeing puppies everywhere. Like there's such a puppy boom, at least in Prague here. Everyone has a dog that is somewhere between 5 months and 2 years old. And obviously, I belong to that group as well because Pax just turned 2. I sometimes feel like when you get a car of certain color, suddenly you see blue cars everywhere, or the same make of car. I see puppies everywhere. So anyway, it's been a really fun day today. Beside preparing, I also went for a little walk just before I sat down at the computer here, and we ran into a little 5-month-old Welsh corgi, and I was actually hoping that I'll be able to uh, download some of the pictures for you and show you, because it was such a great thing to see Pax and this pup to interact and socialize, and it was lovely, lovely, lovely. Uh, Last time we talked about socialization, and I feel that it is still a good reminder to say puppies must be socialized early. The most important part, if you remember just one thing, do not believe the suggestion that puppies should not socialize until 4 months of age. It is basically an equivalent of children not socializing until they're 8 years, not 8 months, 8 years. And that usually results in behavior problems and fearfulness and aggression and all sorts of different issues. It is also a result of some dogs, especially the little tiny doggies. I love them, but they're yappy because they are not used to socializing with how would I say that, polite larger dogs. They're usually afraid. Today we are going to focus at nutrition and puppies. Believe it or not, 25 plus years ago, I was one of the top sellers of processed pet foods in British Columbia, Canada, in the province of British Columbia. And I'm not really embarrassed about it. I just think that it's a good experience to go through the whole evolution, because I went through the veterinary education and I believe that there's no better food than kibble. It's kind of ironic that I forgot completely that my childhood dog, Gerda, was that's a German name, by the way, Gerda. Her name was Gerda von Strassenhoff. That was her paper name. Crazy. Anyway, she ate raw meat. And then I went through vet school and came to Canada, and everyone fed the fancy food, and fancy, processed food that is fancy packed. The food that costs less than the packaging that it's in. So anyway, it gave me a real perspective of what happens to most of my colleagues and why we recommend processed food. We are taught by pet food companies that that's the best thing to do. We are taught that that's the only way we can feed balanced diet. And at the end, you start seeing all the different issues that basically dogs come with to veterinary clinics. And suddenly you start wondering, well, is this really the best? The problem is that most people know that their human doctors recommend only fresh food or healthy food. They don't tell us, feed processed food and that's the only thing that you should eat. Eat McDonald's or eat cookies and processed garbage. And weirdly enough, the other part of the medical profession, as the veterinary profession, recommends only processed food. So there is something wrong with the picture, and everyone that knows how the whole system is set up understands that it's very complicated. Everyone understands that, or most people understand that the veterinary profession is educated by the pet food companies. In my Czech culture, or in my, how would you say that, Alicia? Do you call it in my original culture, or in my native culture? We call it making a goat a gardener, right? If someone basically does something that benefits clearly, right? The goat would eat all the veggies in the garden, and processed pet food companies basically made us believe that only their processed food is good for our dogs. So anyway, remember that there are no doctors, no medical doctors that recommend processed food for people. And there should ideally not be any veterinarians who recommend processed food for dogs. There's another side or another point of view that you can just kind of look at. And that is that even if the processed food was made from the best possible ingredients, it still sits on the shelves for months and sometimes years. And if you look up the videos how it's made, and I actually did go on some sort of website of a British Pet Food Company Association that I just kind of randomly found today. And they pride themselves, they basically they put a little study saying dogs that are fed proper nutrition live longer, but they do not really say what kind of nutrition it was. So they basically just made a statement, dogs that eat proper nutrition live longer. Well, of course they do. But then they put a little video of what they do with the food, and then they select safe ingredients, but they do not really say that they select quality ingredients. They do call them byproducts, of course, byproducts of human consumption, which means that they're the food that is not suitable for humans. But many of you who are watching today know all this, and I would like to talk about puppies especially. And one of the most common questions that we get is, what is the right calcium and phosphorus ratio for growing puppies? And, I'm a curious guy, and I like to kind of look at what the industry recommends and what the Merck Veterinary Manual recommends, because it's kind of like a veterinary Bible in a way. And they recommend 2 to 18 grams of calcium per 1,000 calories. So basically, anything between 2 to 18 is okay. It's like saying, when you're baking, just add 2 to 18 spoons of baking soda, and it's it's gonna be okay. And then they recommend 2.5 grams of phosphorus. And then they, on top of that, and I didn't really mention it in this slide, on top of that, they say that there could be 30% fluctuation in that. And then they say, well, maybe the optimal range is somewhere around 3 grams per 1,000 calories of 3 grams of calcium and 2.5 grams of phosphorus, which means that the ratio is somewhere around 1.2 to 1 calcium to phosphorus and 1.3 to 1 in adult dogs. So puppies have a little different ratio than the adult dogs. But, I think that the phosphorus is not as big of an issue in either having challenges or problems in puppy nutrition. It is the fact that we are feeding, usually when we feed processed food, very calorie dense food. There is 2/3 of volume, 2/3 of less volume, than the regular fresh meat, with the same amount of calories in it. So what happens? Basically, puppies overeat because the stomach has the sensors for volume. It doesn't have the sensors for calories, right? So if we eat dry, dehydrated food, we pack in 3 times the calories than if we ate regular fresh food. And that's actually one of the reasons why people also get obese when they eat processed food. So the other problem that happens when puppies eat this calorie-rich food is that they grow fast because they're getting a lot of calories. They don't necessarily get overweight because they have such fast metabolism, but they grow really tall, but weak. They're like the tree or plant that gets over-fertilized. So there is lack of strength, but they're tall and big. And what happens as a result of that, they start suffering from serious problems, especially joint and bone deformities, and that is a really serious problem, especially in large breeds. In the small breeds, they, proportionally, they don't grow as fast. But the large breeds, like between 3 to 5 or 6 months, they just explode. Like even with Pax, who is about 54 pounds or so, like I remember the period between 3 months to 6 months, I didn't even believe that I have the same dog because he was so different. When bones grow fast, they lose their end joints, they lose their integrity, right? And that's how hip dysplasia or elbow dysplasia or cartilage issues happen. I'm going to show you hip dysplasia X-ray here. The sockets here are really shallow. This is a really bad case of a dysplasia. When this dog moves, the muscles may be holding it together somewhat, but it's a serious problem. There's friction, there's excessive movement. It will end up in arthritis very, very fast. So the fast growth actually reduces the quality of the formation of the joints. It's like the body has no other choice than doing a haphazard job to keep up with the growth. So many people say genes are responsible for hip dysplasia, and at the same time, I've seen like at least 90% reduction of hip dysplasia in dogs in the overall population of dogs by feeding diet that is not as calorie dense, which means fresh diet, whether it's cooked or raw. Another issue that comes up often is elbow dysplasia. This is the radius, that's the bone right here. And this is the ulna right here, the one that is in the back. And usually what happens when dogs grow fast, the ulna grows actually faster, and you can see that there's a little bit of a step here in the connection of those two bones, right? So that's called hip dysplasia. And it usually ends up again with irregular movement and friction and so on. And on top of that, because everything grows so fast, that sometimes this little end of the bone, which is called coronary process, actually fractures off. You can see that there is a fracture of the black line because everything is so tense and tight, like even the muscles and tendons cannot really keep up with the growth. And when it comes to shoulders, what happens? The head of the humerus, which is the arm bone, grows so fast that basically the cartilage on top of the head actually fractures. It kind of chips off because the bone inside grows so much that there's pressure. It's like I don't know, I'm thinking of, if you push on a cherry, suddenly like it'll burst, or is there something else that we could burst like that? I don't know, boiled egg, right? Like you press on it and suddenly cracks. So this is called Osteochondritis Dissecans, and chondritis is the cartilage, inflammation of cartilage, and dissecans is separation in Latin, or separated cartilage, basically. Panosteitis, sorry, this is the wrong slide, but panosteitis is a pain and inflammation of long bones. Pan is overall, osteitis is inflammation of bones. So again, that fast growth will result in inflammation of the bones. And then dogs are put on anti-inflammatories and they have to go through really painful and horrible surgeries. I have a friend in the UK who adopted a dog with, I believe, elbow dysplasia or shoulder osteochondritis. I can't remember now. But, 7-month-old puppy should be playing, should be running. And we have this dog that went through surgeries, may not be completely fine. She actually adopted him after he was diagnosed, bless her heart, because big commitment, major. She's an angel in my mind. But this dog was fed Kibble before she adopted it. And I am quite certain that the condition would be either less severe or non-existent if it wasn't growing that fast. So you guys, I know that I sometimes ask you to share materials and so on, but can you please share this recording, because it'll help so many dogs, and it'll help so many dog lovers to go through heartbreak, and dogs to go, and puppies to go through painful and emotionally challenging times. It really breaks my heart. I can't even describe it, how difficult it is for me to see these things. Let's talk about the myths. The first myth is, and people believe, now myths are the things that people believe but are not really true. I don't need to really explain that to everyone, but if there are any ESL people here, including myself, maybe it's good to kind of point it out. I just don't want people to think that this is what I recommend and suggest. So I have so many people in a park telling me, I curiously ask what they feed, and they tell me, well, I've been told I must not switch the food. I'm planning to feed Rob, and he's 6 or 12 months old, but now he must stay on Kibble until he's fully grown, which is so wrong. And that's exactly where the problems develop, right? Between 0 to 12 months. You basically have, most dogs are kind of fully grown by 12 months. Some of them grow a little longer, the larger breeds. But it's super important for us to remember that if we want to switch food to something better, we should do it as early as possible. Ideally, as soon as they are able to accept food, solid food. And if you haven't had control over that, as soon as you get your puppy, please, please, please switch it to natural food. Now, we're going to be posting our recipe maker URL or address, web address. I'll tell you anyway. It's recipemaker.peterdobias, Dobias.com. So it's recipemaker.peter, Peterdobias.com. So that's the first myth, and I will be answering questions. So if you have them, please make notes, and then I'll be getting to the questions. The second myth is that, and I've collected some pictures here, and I always love to play with my camera and then use the pictures in my slideshow. So this is Pax when he was about 8 weeks, I think, somewhere there, 7, 8 weeks. Look at the little monkey. I can see the naughty and a little stubborn, but overall sweet quality of his, even on this picture. Our dogs never change. Like, what you get when they're puppies, like you will have. Pax is like an eternal kid. Today, we went to the park, and he loves kids. So before I know it, actually he runs to the kids and he wants to greet all of them. And sometimes he jumps up on them, which terrifies me. But most people are actually really fine with it here. They just love dogs. Everyone has dogs. Anyway, so the myth that only kibble can provide complete nutrition is like saying only junk food provides complete nutrition. And we know that that's not true. And if you have any questions about it, please ask. Myth number 3, canned food is a good addition to a puppy diet. And, one would think, okay, it's not dehydrated, so it must be better for puppies. But there are 2 big issues with canned food. Number 1, it's cooked at 130 degrees, which is, I think, 266 Fahrenheit. And so it's basically totally dead food. But there's another big issue, that cans actually have lining inside, and they have BPA or bisphenol A. BPA or bisphenol A is a xenoestrogen, and it acts like estrogen, and it is not healthy for us, nor our dogs. Therefore, we should not be feeding canned food. That's one of the biggest reasons. And obviously the high temperature. And here we go. It's 266 Fahrenheit. I actually have it. I put it on the slide. So yeah, if you have any temptation to give your dog canned food, at least a little bit sometimes, I'd say don't. And if you want to preserve food because you're traveling, just put it in glass jars and preserve it at 130 degrees in pressure cooker, and then you can obviously pack it with you, or you can have frozen food or dehydrated food and then rehydrate it. When you travel, you can actually be without kibble Okay. And I do have a dehydrator. They're not that expensive now. And you just basically make your dog food as if you were following the recipe maker that you will be able to use, and um, make food that lasts. So myth number 4, Kibble cleans teeth. Now, this is an extreme, and I decided to show you extreme because ultimately this is how it ends. If you've ever noticed, after you eat cookies, it kind of creates a little plaque or layer of buildup on your teeth. And that's a breeding ground for bacteria, which then creates this calcification or firm mineral deposit on top of your teeth or your dog's teeth. And bacteria loves it. It starts eroding the gums first, then the bones, and then it goes into abscesses. And then, and this is the most devastating thing, that it ends up with valve disease, because this bacteria gets in the heart and infects the valves, and also destroys kidney units because they're very fine. And as soon as there's bacteria and inflammation in the kidneys, the body actually starts destroying these units. And as a result, you will end up with a dog with a kidney insufficiency. And it'll start showing up only after 75% of the kidneys are destroyed. So when your doctor, your veterinarian tells you your dog has kidney failure, 75% of the kidneys are gone already. So there's a blog on dental care. You can really maintain your dog's teeth well with feeding raw bones, the right raw bones. And you can, again, refer to the blog that Paula is most likely posting as we are speaking. And my dog Sky was 16 when he died, and he never had to have dental cleaning under anesthesia. But if it gets bad, you have to, and then you can refer to the blog how to maintain your dog's teeth. Again, start with puppyhood. Start with maintenance and care. But to be honest, some people.
Sorry, I was going to say, and before we move to the next slide, to be clear, it doesn't just look horrific. This would be very painful for a dog. Am I right? Whether it's drinking, eating, and they can't express that pain to us.
Thank you for pointing that out, Alicia. And I can't emphasize enough what you just said, and that's why we're such a good team. The discomfort and the level of pain and the decrease of quality of life is obviously the number one thing. And for me, it kind of comes without saying, but it's really good to point it out. Just don't let it go anywhere this far, but even half that bad or a quarter that bad, right? Like basically treat your dog's teeth as if they were yours. And when it comes to anesthesia and how often and when, read the blog because there's more information. Myth number 5, diet switch has to be done gradually. This is not really true. I've worked with thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands of dogs in the course of 30 years, and most of them do super well in a switch that is only about a few days long. So, if you really want to switch your puppy from one food to another, start with maybe for a couple of days, 50-50 cooked squash or sweet potatoes and some cooked meat. It doesn't need to be chicken. It can be anything else, any meat, and cook it for a couple of days and then offer raw food and see what happens. Obviously, I usually suggest probiotics just to make sure that the bacterial flora is right. And if there's diarrhea, not a problem. You just go back to cook food again, and it takes only a little bit more time. But most puppies are so eager to eat fresh food. And then some dogs who are on fresh food love to get into kibble, like my dog Pax, because he thinks it's great to go to McDonald's. Just kidding. But, it's kind of a McDonald's, right, of the canine world, kibble. Because what they do, and I was watching this video this morning, they basically process all the ingredients and then they bake them so there is no bacteria and all that stuff, and then they pour some flavors on it, and dogs just love it, and cats even more so. I would see some cats being so addicted to certain flavor that they basically refuse to eat anything else. So there's a lot of science going into the kibble diet. If your dog is refusing in the switch the food, guess what? Even puppies can, well, I wouldn't see puppies actually even fast themselves, but they can fast for a couple of days, no problem. And older dogs can fast for 7 days easily. They can fast probably for much longer, but 7 days is very safe. On top of that, fasting, and this is great news, fasting actually activates longevity genes in the body and certain enzymatic systems. It's important. So if you feed your dog, especially older dog, more than once a day, definitely go to once a day. And when it comes to puppies, I'll give you a simple formula. You feed them 3 times a day until they're about 5 or 6 months. When they start skipping the middle meal, or you see that they're not as eager to eat it, switch to 2 meals, morning and evening. And then around 12 months, plus minus, you can start feeding once a day. The other thing that you need to remember, never feed your dog before exercise. And this is something that people do, and it's super dangerous. Especially when they're on kibble, they have very weak stomach walls, and they're more likely to bloat. So again, bloats are more common in dogs on kibble, because the kibble is eaten, then a dog drinks, it expands, it may ferment, and the stomach wall is really weak because dogs on kibble don't get any bones, don't need to grind the meat and the food, and as a result, they are more likely to bloat. Again, there's a blog on bloat. I would highly recommend you educating yourself in that area, because it's super important for any dog lover to know and understand. So that's myth number, what number were we at? Myth number 5. So no gradual switching. Like, it doesn't need to be done over a month. Like, a couple of days is fine. Like, at the most 7 days. And I basically switch packs from one day to another because I knew that it would be fine. The next thing that some of my colleagues suggest, that and pet food companies for sure, that food has bacteria in it, and it's dangerous. And it's not only dangerous for our dogs, but it's also dangerous for us because we handle the meat. Now, can you please tell me what the difference is between handling the meat, if you eat meat for yourself before you cook it, and cutting it up for your dog? Also, some people say, but it's in the feces. It's in the feces. Well, in the feces, there's always bacteria. But I'll tell you one thing. I have not seen dog lovers who feed raw food getting sick with salmonellosis or E. coli. I have never had anyone coming back, and I'm sure that I would hear it. And I suspect that we actually gain more immunity. There was some study done in Germany where they discovered that children who were exposed to cow manure are actually healthier than those who are basically living in city environments. So the study basically concluded that if we want to be healthy and have healthy children, we should move a cow in our living room. I'm just kidding, but it's basically the same thing with our dogs. They are designed to deal with bacteria. Like, would anyone be surprised if a lion actually, when lion is eating meat, or this little canine? I think that this is fennec. I think that it's a Canidae animal from Africa. I took this picture in 2015 when we took our mother to Africa. But I kind of found it today. I thought, this is kind of cool. They're 2 carnivores. So nobody would be surprised if these 2 carnivores eat raw meat. Nobody would be concerned about the bacteria. Our dog's digestion is actually unrecognizable from those wild canines and felines. If I gave a piece of tissue to a histologist or anatomist, they would not be able to recognize the cut, whether it's a wild canine, let's say a wolf or dog. Some people object, well, but our dogs have lived with us for a long time. Well, they haven't lived with us long enough to actually go through some dramatic changes. Their dentition is actually suggesting that they should be eating meat and a little bit of plant material and bones. So if you're worried about bacteria, if you want to know more about what I think about bacteria in dogs, you can read that article. I think that the cleaning product industry has kind of brainwashed us a little bit, thinking the bacteria is horrible. But you know what is horrible? The disinfectants that actually breed the resistant bacteria. What I've noticed in medicine, let's say in ear problems, like if you have a dog with ear problems and you start washing the ear over and over and over with cleaning products and so on, that is how the severe bad resistant bacteria actually rises, because we kill the weak ones, and we kind of clear cut the bacteria, and the strong invasive species actually are so resistant and resilient that they survive. And every time I have an ear problem or some sort of severe infection anywhere in the body, I know that there was probably antibiotics used over and over and over, or cleaning solutions. When you go to hospitals, I remember in Vancouver, there's this old hospital in downtown Vancouver, and every time I walk in, it really stinks like, bacteria. And I think that it is just because they're using these strong disinfectants over and over and over. And I pretty much know that every person that goes for a surgery there ends up with some sort of complication. My partner actually ended up with a complication post-surgery because, there's so much resistant bacteria. So using chemical strong products is actually harmful to us and our dogs, not only because it kills the bacteria out, it allows the resistant species of bacteria to grow. So remember that. Myth number 7, puppies must not eat chicken bones. Oh my goodness, I've heard that so often. And what should puppies eat? Should they eat chews, or should they eat golf balls? Or, those are all the things that they chew when they don't get what they need and what they should be getting. And there's one kind of myth that came up with the chicken bone feeding. The pet food companies didn't tell us, well, you shouldn't be feeding cooked bones. They just tell us you should not be feeding chicken bones, period, because they're dangerous. In 20 plus years, I have not seen one single dog having an obstruction from a chicken bone, or even from other bones, let's say beef ribs or lamb shanks. And some people, tell me, I usually see the horrified face because they think, oh my goodness, they will splinter and it'll puncture the intestine. I've done many, many surgeries, abdominal surgeries in my lifetime, and the intestine is really, really tough. It will not puncture, especially because it also contracts. As soon as the point actually hits the wall, it contracts and deflects it. On top of that, the stomach acids will dissolve the bones when they're raw. If they're cooked, a different story, dangerous stuff. So some people go the other extreme, that they feed cooked bones, and I would say do not do that, because it's gonna be a problem. I remember our dachshund, Gerda, actually got cooked chicken necks from soup, and she ended up having them actually stuck. And my dad, who was a veterinarian as well, had to operate on her and remove these cooked chicken neck vertebrae. But raw is fine. Just remember that. And I know many of you are watching this and saying, I know that. We need to kind of spread the message, spread the word. So be patient with me today if you know some of this stuff, because we need to help those who don't. I talked about the bone splintering. Give your puppy at least one bone a day. And when you switch to 2 times feeding, from 3 times to 2 times, give your puppy a edible bone every 3rd feeding, I would say. And if it's not edible, just entertainment bone, it can be every day. But if you feed too many bones, some people feed just chicken carcasses, and I think it's just too hard on the digestive tract, because it takes much more labor, and dogs get very kind of crumbly white stool, which is okay. Some people think it's constipation. It's not. It's actually great for massaging the anal glands. But if you give chicken or other carcasses too often, then it may be too much. So every 3rd feeding, roughly, twice a week for an adult dog that is fed once a day. And they love it. It's entertainment. They exercise. They don't chew your shoes, your Manolos or whatever you have. And you probably, I don't know many dog lovers. Well, some people probably have Manolos. I know that they're just expensive shoes. I remember that from Sarah Jessica Parker, right? She always said Manolos, Alicia.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I must confess that we had friends visiting in the COVID time in Maui, and Pax actually chewed up, not Manolos, but something expensive. It was really embarrassing. And even though he had bones, like obviously he thought that those shoes were really cool, and yeah, that they're a good toy. Anyway, toothbrushing, that's another myth, and it's not necessarily related to diet directly, but kind of, it's part of digestive tract. People think that tartar like this can be brushed off. So if you have any tartar on, you have to basically have your dog examined by a veterinarian or dental hygienist. I know that some veterinarians don't think that the dental hygiene is okay, that all dogs should get under anesthesia, but I think that if there is a mild tartar buildup, especially on the canine teeth, all you need to do is to actually have someone scaling the teeth, and people who are experienced, they can actually do the scaling themselves. But I want to emphasize that I would not recommend an average person who has not been taught how to do it, because you can injure the gums, you may not do a proper job, you will risk your dog's teeth. My approach to it is ideally a lot of crunchy bone feeding, then hand scaling the canines. Also, when you have, like the young coconuts that are really fibrous, the green outside is really fibrous. It's like dental floss. And I noticed that when Pax plays with them, that he actually even scales or removes the plug from his canines. And if there's a little bit of buildup, as soon as there's buildup or even a little bit of redness along the gum line, you will have to have someone to actually hand scale if your dog is okay with it. Now, every puppy should have their teeth handled regularly every day. And, toothbrushing is more of an exercise of handling than really a very effective way of preventing tartar. Bones are much better, but it is okay. And, if your dog, let's say, allows you the ultrasonic toothbrush, if he's a cool dude or a cool gal or chick, pup, a bitch, cool bitch, they may handle ultrasonic toothbrush. Pax doesn't. He actually allows me to vacuum him. And I do that for tick prevention, even though we use tick hex and quite successfully. That's the herbal tick prevention. And he allows me to vacuum him as well. So I vacuum just to make sure that those ticks are not getting in my house and so on. All right. So the next myth is that puppies should require different food than adult dogs. And this is a biggie. This is a big, 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 big. Why did I use a monkey? Because I wanted to. I love that picture too. Anyway, let's go to mammals in general. There is no mammal on this planet, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I haven't found one, that would eat different food when young, adult, or senior. Every single animal eats the same food. It's not like, the lions actually decide, okay, this is the baby food and this is the adult food and this is the senior food, right? And the only reason why, well, there's several reasons why it's happened in cats and dogs, and especially dogs. If we feed them wrong food, we will see problems. And pet food companies assume, okay, there are problems with some growth issues and so on. So we'll start fiddling around with the formulas. Also, it's a great marketing method. Give you an impression that you cannot really formulate food for your dog is what they really want. And, I'd like to live with the idea or believe that there are some people who work for pet food companies and mean well. If they do not know, I cannot blame them, and I'm not angry with them. But if they know, and some of them do know and have and work for these companies and make this kind of food, they deserved the attention. I think that we should tell everyone that that's what's happening, right? Like it's just kind of wild and crazy. So now we have large breed puppy food and this and that, and it's probably even going into breed selections. I haven't really gone on the websites to see what they're offering lately, but I know that it's basically senior food and adult dog food and small breed and large breed and Chihuahua and Great Dane and this and that. And so let's be honest. The only reason why they do it is because it's convenient for them. It is not what nature intended. It is not what nature does. And I will never recommend or follow this kind of idea. Some veterinarians have been, again, brainwashed. And it's very hard, we veterinarians have gone to school, and if we don't follow the rules or what we were taught, we fail. So that kind of attitude, I think that we bring it, like we basically follow. We are a little bit soldier-like in a way, unless we are shit disturber-like. Actually, I don't call it shit disturbing. I think that it's just common sense, right? Anyway, so don't be mad with your veterinarians if they recommend special puppy formulas. Don't be mad with them. Just remember the service providers that you may or may not take their advice. And if you're educated well, and if you learn how to feed raw diet or cook diet, if you're not feeling comfortable with raw, you'll do a good job. Obviously, there's another issue, and that's completeness of the food. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. So that's the myth that puppies require different food than adult dogs and seniors. Myth number 11: large breeds need different food than smaller breeds. Again, that's something that I already discussed, and I'll show you the slide that I chose. Why did I choose elephants? Because I wanted to. I kind of thought that, putting just dogs in there is boring. And I have tons of photos. I pretty much carry my camera all the time. And it's so lovely to see the world through the lens because you notice different things. And myth number 12, again, younger dogs need more protein than older dogs. Big pile of doo-doo. Nature never makes a difference between young, senior, and adult. The only reason when I feed low protein diet is in terminal stages of kidney disease. And again, this is not to say that when you have a dog with kidney disease, older dog with kidney disease, or any dog with kidney disease, that you should ignore diet. But you know what the biggest challenge is for kidneys? Kibble. Because when you feed kibble, it sucks the water out of your dog's system, and it stresses the kidneys. The urine will have to be concentrated, and the kidneys have to work very hard to concentrate urine and spare water. But what I've seen in mild to moderate kidney disease, if you feed low protein diet, these dogs will starve of protein. They will muscle waste away. And in cats, it's even more so. Cats are true carnivores. Dogs are omnivores with carnivorous tendencies or preference. So younger dogs do not need more protein. Older dogs do not need less protein. They need just food as nature intended. What is myth number 14? Puppies need 3 sets of vaccines to be immune. And I decided to throw these things in because last time we talked about vaccines and immunity. And it may surprise some of you that immunity against the major diseases lasts somewhere between 7 to 15 years after just one vaccine. And I have a little protocol, vaccine protocol here that I use, and there is a full blog for you on my website at peterdobias.com. But if I'm gonna try to enlarge this. Let's see. Oh, okay. So I call it actually infectious disease prevention protocol as opposed to vaccination protocol. I do not vaccinate puppies until 12 weeks. I do not actually measure titer tests until 12 weeks. Titer test is the antibody or protection level. And usually that is acquired from the mother's milk or colostrum. That's the first fraction of the milk. If the titer test is positive, I do not vaccinate. I test at 5 months again. And if it's positive, I test it 1 year, and I do distemper parvo, which are the most serious and important diseases. And then I test maybe at 2 years, and then I stop testing because I've never seen a dog with distemper parvo over 6 months of age. So I'm going extra length here. But I see so many dog lovers in the park who say, my dog is 12 and he's going for boosters. Do not give your dog boosters if he's an adult over 2 years. Really not necessary. And I would not be like, I have nothing to gain. I'm actually putting my shirt online when I'm giving you this information, because I know that most people will disagree with me, most of my colleagues. But I have used this protocol for at least 15 years, and it has worked beautifully. 0 dogs with parvo and distemper in my practice. I had 1 dog with leptospirosis, but guess what? Parasite-ridden dog that was on Kibble, was not taken out until the age of 4 months, and then got less leptospirosis in an area where it was present. Very rare situation. Parvovirus, I've seen it once or twice in my practice when I was working up in Whistler, BC, which is a ski resort. A lot of dogs that kind of, breed because people are skiing, and they, or in the old days, Alicia actually lives in Whistler. So you don't remember, Alicia, what it was like. It was a Wild West, definitely. So then, puppies are not fed properly, and they're not dewormed, and then they may get parvo. But it's only those who are compromised and immune compromised and do not get the first fraction of the milk, and the mothers are unhealthy and all that. So I'm going to decrease the size again. You can take a screenshot if you wish, or as an alternative, you can go to the website and see this immunity protocol. I believe that it's in the blog, Alicia. If it's not, we should be adding it on. Myth number 15, the last one before number 16, before we're done. Some people believe that puppies need to stay thin in order to prevent growth problems. My perspective is puppies need to eat as much as they want of the right food. If you start restricting diet just because you're feeding kibble, you're actually starve them. They're going to be food hounds. They're going to eat everything, including the socks and shoes, but they also will not be strong enough, right? And when you see these ribby dogs, ribby puppies, like when you see the ribs and they're really prominent, it's not a good nutritional state. Ideally in puppies, you should be able to feel and count the ribs, but you should not be seeing them if you have a short-haired dog, or if you give your long-haired dog a bath. You should not be seeing the ribs. Restricting food before 1 year, from my perspective, is a wrong thing to do. What you need to do is to feed the right food, and then your dog is not going to overeat and will become obese. It will not become obese. Obesity is actually a processed food disease and carb disease, but mainly processed food disease in dogs and people and cats. They would never be able to eat that amount of calories if they were on raw or cooked food. And this is something actually that you may want to remember if you are trying to lose weight yourself. The most important part is to avoid high density calorie rich food. Some people say, we should go off carbs because carbs are bad. The weird thing is that I actually had maybe over like 2-3 kilos over 2 years ago. And I was really trying to eat less, and I was not eating any fiber. I was not eating any whole grain because it was carbs. So many of these dietary trends say you should not be eating carbs. But as soon as I started eating whole grain and vegetables and reduced the calorie-rich diets like chocolate, a little bit of chocolate, sometimes a little more chocolate. But anyway, really, like if you feel like having a dessert and you have an apple or banana, it is never as calorie dense as granola bar or power bar or something like that, right? So it's always better to actually stay with the whole food, and you will succeed. And the same thing applies to puppies. Last slide, 16, number 16. Would you believe that I forgot what number 16 is? Let me see. Oh, okay, I got it. So before I show you the slide, what I did actually, I was curious. I wanted to compare Pax and Sky, my previous dog, because my dog Sky did not get on essential support and supplements, minerals, amino acids, which is Greamin, then soul food, which is fermented whole food vitamin supplement and organ support, then probiotics and omega oils. He did not get those until he was about 7 or 8 years. And we introduced some of them in 2012 and then maybe 13 or 14. So he was pretty much like in his teens when I started giving him the supplements and the support. Pax, on the other hand, got them as soon as I got him. I was not able to convince the breeder here in Prague to actually feed him raw food and supplements before I got him. He was fed Kibble. I was frustrated, but I thought, okay, it's only 8 weeks or maybe 6 or 5 weeks, he'll be fine. So I found pictures that are kind of similar in how Sky and Pax are standing, and there's a little bit of an age difference, but this is the first time I've done that, and I go, wow, I did not realize how much of a difference there was in so many ways. So on the left, Sky, he was about 4 years old here, and on the right, Pax, who was about a year and a bit here. But I'll describe what I'm seeing, okay, now. Sky already had issues with his back, and the back is actually, it's a significant part of overall health assessment, okay? And Sky, I can't really say that Sky would be different if I was giving him the essential support at the beginning. But I do believe that he would, because the way Pax and Sky evolved was completely different. And I know that genetics play a role as well, but they say that the epigenetics are responsible. The epigenetics, the environment, the food, the external out of the gene factors play a major role, 80%. Sorry, I got a little tangled in it here. Sometimes I use long sentences and then I get tangled. Anyway, genes are responsible only for about 15 to 20%. So other things were happening, but these two dogs were getting the same exercise. They were getting the same food, and I'm seeing a huge difference. You can see the little coat quality. Like, I like long-haired dogs to have nice, even coat, because when there's a lack of energy flow in some of the spinal segments, the hair coat starts curling. And my chiropractor, actually, Dr. Lana from Vancouver, taught me that as well. So you can see that the hair coat on Pax is really nice and smooth. On Sky, it's kind of curly, and it's obviously they may have a different coat, but still there is a difference. You can see the stance, very different stance. And when it comes to Pax and Sky, totally different digestion. Sky used to have diarrhea when he was a young puppy. He actually taught me a lot about diarrhea and how to manage them. But Pax is so full of beans and so full of energy. And I do believe that if I didn't give him the building blocks that he needed, that he wouldn't be that way. And the reason why I believe that is that I've seen many, many dogs who are on raw food and they still don't develop and evolve as well. And I know that many of you out there still think that food is enough, just food is enough. And some people even tell me or write me, well, I actually had one lady some time ago commenting on Facebook saying, oh, you should check Dr. Dobias' site. There's so much information. He pushes his products, but otherwise he's fine. And it always frustrates me because number one, we are actually a supplement company. So we make our living, and I pay my team by selling good products that actually have 4.9 stars out of 5. So there's, in hundreds of reviews. So there's something about it. But second, if I was just bitching and complaining that dog food is deficient and then didn't give you a solution that I think is actually good, then what kind of veterinarian would I be? I also wanted to create something for my own dogs and my patients. And I know that we've been abusing and overusing soils in such a way that the nutrients just don't get back to the soil. Like, do you know any Californian farmers or in Mexico who are actually taking the compost from Canada and bring it back to Mexico and California? I don't. They just cannot afford it. And in nature, the cycle would be closed. In real world right now, most of the leftovers and also our feces end up in some sort of sealed container or maybe in the fields. And then we have problems because, it's just unnatural unnatural process when we put human manure with drugs and birth control and everything on the fields. So there's so many different issues, but the main issue is that our dogs cannot make any minerals. And there's 37,000 billion chemical reactions happening in the body every second. I know that I've repeated almost every Facebook Live. But if you want to have your dog healthy and your puppy healthy, it's super important for you to acknowledge this. And if someone believes that that just food is fine, I'm gonna suggest one thing. Let's take 5 people who actually think that, and I will send you essential minerals and vitamins, and you'll see the difference in 3 months for free. 3, did I say 5? Let's do 5. 10 products for free today. Because I know that sometimes seeing is believing. And for those of you who are not in the 10, and don't tell me that you're not getting products if you are, we can look it up, okay? So no cheating. But seeing is believing. And I know that my team loves doing what we're doing because it makes so much difference. And sometimes when we have our little sessions, like customer service meetings or team meetings, we sometimes just to, life is challenging and business is challenging sometimes. So we read ourselves the little messages that we get from you guys. And it's so fun to hear about the transformations. It's like, some people ask me, why don't you just sell your company and retire? I think I would miss it so much. And I would miss my team. I would miss you guys. I don't think I can do it. But so, yeah, the only thing is just don't tell me I shouldn't be selling supplements because I will, because I know they make a difference. Tough luck. By the way, you don't need to buy them. So thank you so much for watching today. Alicia, thank you for being such a great spirit and also reminding me some of the things that I forget. And Paula, thank you so much in the background. And most of all, thank you all for being here. Give your dog a hug for me. If you're not subscribed, go to peterdobias.com. We send a weekly newsletter with information on how to keep your dog healthy and happy. We also have podcasts now, which I actually love to record, even though I'm not perfect in it. It's hard to speak in a second language. I'm realizing that when I'm now in Prague, there's something about speaking the native tongue. It's just so nice. But I also have a lot of respect when I hear the English-speaking people trying to speak Czech. It's kind of brings it to another perspective. So keep an eye on my Facebook and Instagram because I'm going to be recording some short videos on different tips. Some of them will be the ones that you've heard already, but I'm also taking you through the streets and areas of Prague and just kind of love doing that. Yeah, stay in touch. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.